You're here, which means that you've found spirit crumbs, leading you to your inner light worker. I will be sharing how these tiny little hints from the universe have led me to where I am today. I hope that by hearing my story and the stories of others, you'll pick up your own spirit crumbs along the way that will lead you to somewhere magical. Thanks for coming along for the journey. Let's see where it takes us.
Hello and welcome back for another joint episode. I'm Emily from the Emily and Her Stars podcast.
And I'm Andrea from Concrete and Crystals and Spirit Crumbs.
We're back. I cannot believe it's Virgo season already. Leo has flown by. Flown by. I know as we're recording, we're still in the tail end of this energy, but it was much needed after that incredibly long Cancer season with a Mercury retrograde twist. How about you? How are you feeling with it all?
I totally agree. I think Cancer season felt like 17 years. We've been talking about how time is flying by, but I think actually in retrospect, it did feel very long. That was one of the toughest Mercury retrogrades, I think, for a lot of people that I've talked to. I think we all were going through it. There was a lot happening, but I do think this Leo season really refreshed my energy. I feel like a different version of myself. The last 2 weeks have been very productive in terms of actually finding the direction that I'm feeling and just feeling like creative energy is coming back in. And it's one of the truest Leo energies. We've kind of said that going into it, that from what we were looking at with the cards and the energy, that we felt like it was going to be a very true Leo season. And I actually see that in, just lightness in people that I haven't seen for the last few months.
Oh, I think that's a really great point. And I think we've gotten used to this idea of Mercury retrograde being travel issues, technical issues, the normal setbacks. And what was so surprising was the amount of emotional turmoil that came out of it. And really, when Leo hit and the nodes shifted, it was like drama came flying out of the woodwork. I had a particularly emotional July. It was a lot of anxiety, a lot of sadness, a lot of pent-up frustration and anger. I mean, I felt like I was pretty okay going in, but then apparently I wasn't. So it was triggering to the things underneath the surface that were, in retrospect, probably tamped down in some ways, but it left me reeling. And when those nodes shifted, and it was the 26th of July when the nodes shifted. So just ahead of that Sun conjunct Jupiter. And we really got this heavy dose of Leo energy. And oh my goodness, if there was just fireworks everywhere. And this goes across all platforms, but I've really seen it play out in spirituality, which we've talked about being potential with both Saturn and Neptune and Aries. If anyone follows the Glasgow Witch, I think she's adorable. She's on Instagram. I mean, she speaks in this gorgeous Scottish accent. She's so soft. Her energy is just lovely and all of the wisdom that she shares. She went on a program that people immediately attacked her for going on. She was like, I didn't know, and I'm sorry if this offended. I was just thought I was getting, some national and global exposure. And then one of the astrologers that is foundational for me recorded on his own podcast some not very well thought through examples for what he was trying to talk about in terms of Pluto and Aquarius. And it really left people reeling. It was racial. It was not, people reached out to try and get him to see the error of his ways and apologize. And it just has snowballed and it's bigger and bigger and bigger each week. So if you felt like there was a sudden shift in drama in your life, I think that's exactly what this Jupiter and Leo aspect has brought about. And we have so many planets in fire and air. It's just adding fuel to the flame literally everywhere. I mean, we have fires everywhere. We have drought in so many places. And this is where I always feel bad when people say, oh, Leo, this is going to be your best year ever because Jupiter's coming in. Well, maybe. So I think collectively we're seeing those play out.
Yeah, I totally think that like fanning the flames energy for sure. We've seen a lot of that. I think that's part of Leo energy, that fiery spark thing. But being combined with other people. So sometimes that's combining and creating like drama, but for other people, it's romance or creativity. And it's just like you don't know what that spark is going to be, that like unpredictable energy. Cancer to Leo was intense, but I think Leo to Virgo feels nice this year. More of a smooth transition compared to our Cancer to Leo for sure.
I think that's a really great point you bring up too with the unexpected, because we talked a lot last month about Barbault's basket and how all of these big outer planets were connected in really positive ways, but we couldn't tell what they were going to bring about. And Uranus by itself is so rebellious and shocking. And it was the next closest planet connected to that Jupiter connection. Jupiter, of course, was opposite Pluto. So it was bringing these ugly things to the surface. And Pluto then connected to Neptune, Neptune back to Uranus. I think this is the undercurrent of things that are still continuing to be exposed in different ways. And I think collectively, like, we're exhausted. We are so tired of 16 plus years of worrying and having a new issue every day to deal with. And the level of, in some ways, apathy towards the next big thing is even shocking to ourselves. So then when there is something that shocks the system enough that you feel the need to react, the reaction is that much bigger because it's pent up from everything underneath. So in some ways, I think that's part of what the basket is unearthing. I heard, and I might have said this last month, the cauldron of change. I think an even better description. And as astrologers, we say this is a pivotal moment and then nothing happens and people are like, well, this just proves that it's not real. But so often we look back and see that that was the seed point. That was the moment where things began to shift. And what came out of that over the next course of, weeks to months to years is how that affects us. So keep that in mind when maybe the world doesn't shake that exact day the way you're expecting, like an eclipse, so to speak, but there is still a shift. There's a growing underneath shift in the energy.
I was even thinking lately about past cycles of my own and how, like, in the day to day, you don't really see your bigger cycles. My cycle is that I'll get into like a plateau. I'm also a sacral generator. So generators do get to a point where we get into a plateau and then we just have to do something new. And I think as a Capricorn, having so much cardinal energy, that also happens to me. And every time I make a change, it's always a sudden thing that I just like, my brain gets stuck on it. I just know it's the thing. And it's like all of that cardinal energy will just like make it happen somehow. And then it happens really quickly. But all in between that, I just think like, oh, okay, I'm doing the day to day, not really disrupting my nervous system at all. It's not feeling like I'm doing anything differently. And then it gets to the point where it all comes together. It's like, oh, wow, I was doing a lot. It's like each of those small things is contributing to the big thing. It's just you don't know when you're going to have the last piece of the puzzle. You don't know which one is the last piece until it's there. And I think collectively, that's also what we're experiencing. Like maybe the whole world isn't looking 100% different after a week, but all the small things that we're seeing that are sort of adding up to make a bigger picture. And I think we talked about this. I brought it up last time. I was talking about Mamdani and how in New York, just the fact that he's getting so much done, and they're all small things, but it is changing the feeling for people who live in New York. And other leaders seeing it and saying, oh shit, we can't pretend that we don't have the ability to do this. We can't keep saying, oh, we can't make this big sweeping change. We can't change everything overnight. No, you can't, but you can do small things consistently until it adds up to be a bigger picture. But we don't know what the effects of that, like Barbault's basket, is going to be. We don't know what the outcome's going to be. But a lot of this is all these small movements we're seeing, small changes, even in your own community. Like, if they're finally fixing up a park for kids or they're doing small things over the next few years. I think something that I don't think enough people do is look at your local municipal plan, whatever the current plan is for the next 5 years or whatever. I looked at ours when I moved here. If everybody were to look at that and actually show up at like the town council meetings and stuff, like this is, I kind of brought up last time too, but I think this is continuing from that. It's like the more you do like the small things that seem silly or small or trivial, they actually are big. Like they add up because if people realize that people are going to show up to the meetings and they are going to ask questions and they are going to make sure that you continue and follow up on what you said you were going to do, all of a sudden that does become a global thing because everyone can see it from social media and whatnot, what everyone else is doing. There's no way of hiding and pretending like, oh no, that never happens in any town. No one ever gets those things done because we can see it happening. Those small things actually are the big things over time.
I was just thinking while you were talking about that, how a really big issue in the news right now is, of course, Trump hiding in the catering truck on July 8th and 9th when they had pretty strong evidence that Iran was looking to target the plane or to target him specifically. And we look back at approximately July 4th and 5th, which is when we had that giant conjunction in Gemini with Uranus. And so now is where you can see going backwards that this actually was a pretty major turning point. And I agree with you in terms of staying up to date on the things that affect your day-to-day life. There's nothing I can do about him hiding in a catering truck and how this all is going to fall. That's its own out there issue. And so much of what the cards and the astrology keeps repeating to us is focus on yourself, focus on what you want, focus on your day to day and the things that are going to make a difference. There's some new construction that I'm not a fan of, and I'm going to find out what's happening. It just is a never ending construction. Anyone else feel that way? So thank you for that reminder. I think that's really, really good to look at. As we get ready to move into Virgo season, a big thing I want everybody to remember is that Mars is in Cancer. Why is this such a big deal this year? Well, it's the first time Mars has been back since it was retrograde here in 2024. It will also go retrograde and back into Cancer early in 2027, like in early January. So whatever you have going on now, and we always talk about how eclipses in particular can play out for 6 months, there is definitely something about the 6-month cycle between what's happening now and what's going to come back around in January and February of next year. I also have noticed Cancers in particular getting really triggered right now. If you have a Cancer moon, a Cancer rising, if you're a Cancer sun, just be aware that this extra heat, this extra frustration, particularly after we just had the retrograde, is going to stay activated. And it might be a really good time for you to speak those boundaries, speak your frustrations. You can't bottle it up and expect everybody else to know what you want them to do or what the appropriate thing is. Sometimes they need to be reminded. So, Virgo, it opens with the sun falling, right? We've reached that pinnacle of solstice at Cancer. We've been falling through Leo, although that's sort of sustained in some ways. And now Virgo, we really are noticing the days are getting shorter, the light is changing. And we're only 30 days out from the equinox. So Virgo is the sign that immediately notice something is happening and packs the flashlight, the map, our coat, our snacks, all of these things, because it wants to get prepared. It's the only mutable earth sign. We have cardinal, which initiates the season, fixed, which holds the middle, and mutable, who starts to let go of those patterns in order to accept the new cardinal coming in next. So it's the only mutable earth sign, which means it knows the season is turning and it would rather adapt to that coming early than get caught unprepared. So this is how Virgo is constantly looking to make things better, to improve them. And it's ruled by Mercury, so it's doing it really quickly, like at lightning speed. The sign itself comes out of grain goddesses, particularly Inanna and Isis and Demeter, who are all women who knew that you really have to sacrifice the seed to get the harvest. Like we can hoard all the seeds, and sure, we might have enough for some day, but you have to sacrifice and let the seed be planted, and maybe it'll grow and maybe it won't. It's the only way to get a harvest. So this idea of death and rebirth being interconnected, it's one continual motion. That's why I think we feel a lot, no matter which hemisphere you're in, southern or northern, this feeling about this time of year where it really is a shift. So many calendars are sold for teachers that are like August to August. And I find that hilarious because it does feel like, in some ways, this is the part of the new year. This is the part where we're ushering in death, letting go of the growth and the expansion that we've had, and we're ready to go quiet. Mercury rules Virgo, so it's taking all of that information and it's dicing it up into smaller and smaller pieces, just like it does with Gemini. The difference is Gemini is curious, so it's almost an insatiable need to break things into smaller pieces because it finds the next piece and then breaks that one down and on and on and on. In Virgo, it's still kind of running on a loop, but the question is, here's the ideal, here's what's happening right now, and how far apart are those two realities? How can I get them to be closer so that I'm not caught off guard, so that I'm not surprised, so that I'm ready when it snows or when the harvest turns or whatever that question is? On the high road of Virgo, this refinement comes with earning more competence. You become like the mentor. You're creating order out of disorder, and you're ready to teach someone else what you've discovered. So it becomes a real talent for how to be of use. On the lower side of a Virgo's energy, it can shame both itself and others, endlessly worrying because it's never perfect enough. You're never perfect enough. The situation is never perfect enough. People never live up to your expectations. And you may even over prepare so much that you never start. We can prepare for something forever, but it's taking that first risky move without knowing it's going to work. We can plant the seed without knowing it's going to grow is a risk. So where you find Virgo in your own chart really represents how to love yourself in the now, even if you're still improving. If you have Virgo as your midheaven or your 10th house, how are you loving yourself in your job that you're in now, even if you know you have a higher purpose or a higher calling? If you have it in the 12th house, it's how do you accept where you are spiritually or unconsciously now while knowing you can still get better? Those are my notes for how we move through Virgo. And you can see how this is coming up even to play in some of the eclipse energy that we've had right now. So I'm curious your thoughts on this.
Yeah, Virgo, like as an earth sign, I feel like I always feel a sigh of relief when we're going into an earth sign. Okay, we can ground a little bit. Let's get organized. But I think Virgo still having that Mercury influence, there's that hint of air to it, an autumn breeze, it's like, okay, there's still movement. It's like, oh, but what's coming with that? There is still that element of curiosity and not so much being entrenched in a certain energy. I really do appreciate that about Virgo. We all have our jokes about Virgo and the never ending list and all of those things. But I think that energy of being prepared, like who doesn't feel better when they are over prepared and do have more than enough for whatever the journey might be. And I think we all sort of get that taste of it as like back to school energy and wanting to dive into something new. Like right now, I'm itching to start a new project or do some research. A lot of us do tend to benefit from that energy. I think most mutable signs do have that element of the transition energy into a new season. And I think that's where I also tend to feel the shifts myself, is like the last week of a season, I tend to start to feel the influence of the next season coming in. I think it was just last episode where we had the same one for two weeks in a row. And I was like, see, that's that transition. Like it's very consistent. So I do think that Virgo being in the earth sign that has that sort of influence, it's a grounding thing. We have everything we need. We know what to plan for. We are covering our bases. And I think that's what I appreciate for this time of year. I also just love the energy of going from summer into fall. There's something just so special about it that has always resonated with me. Every one of my favorite movies includes some sort of element of like fall going into winter. And I think it's just something that feeds my soul. And I always look forward to it. I know a lot of people have the opposite feeling. They're like, oh no, summer's going away. I'm like, it's going to get cold again. But I think there's always something about this time of year that gets people thinking about their next steps, which is totally a Virgo thing. Like, what's coming next? What do I need to start planning for? Or what do I want to start putting my energy towards? And I think that it is something we can benefit from a lot and we can learn a lot from Virgo.
And I also want to remind all the Virgos that you're going to start to feel a little of this tension fall away from you because the North and South nodes were in Pisces and Virgo for the last 18 months. They shifted in July, at the end of July, like I was talking about, but we still have the Pisces eclipse happening right this week as we shift into Virgo. And then we are going to have the final Virgo eclipse. It'll be a lunar eclipse, so a little softer in February. So, end of January, beginning of February, something like that. There's a feeling of you've done a lot of the shedding, you've released some of these patterns, you've kind of been forced to, unfortunately. And it's maybe led you to lean into that Piscean part, that spirituality, that connection to something bigger than you that you can't see. You don't fully understand because it maybe isn't logical or you can't see how it's going to benefit you, but you've been forced to feel into trusting that it's going to be okay. So that energy will be easing up for Virgos. I just wanted to remind you of that. So, what cards did you pull? And did you pull a card for the eclipse as well?
I did not pull an eclipse card, but I am going to do that, I think. I'm going to grab my cards while we're going through the episode and see what comes through. For the last week of Leo season, we had the King of Pentacles. And of course, I was like, yes, bring on the earth energy for our transition into Virgo. But oddly enough, the first card that I pulled for August 22nd or 23rd, depending on where you are, to the 29th for the first week of Virgo season, I pulled the Five of Cups. Now, this actually makes a lot of sense to me because the King of Pentacles says, this is my vision for my legacy. This is what I'm going towards. I'm seeing evidence of this. It's all coming together. Very exciting. But in order to fully commit to one path, you have to let go of other pieces. And I think that is something that sneaks up on you. I think that when things are going really well, sometimes it's confusing to then all of a sudden feel sadness. Honestly, this time of year is a good time for that because, like I said, when you're going from summer, peak like brightness, and then realizing, oh no, it's going away, it's getting cold again, there is that, I think, openness that we maybe don't realize is there. Like it is a perfect time for grief in a way to sneak in because you have the shifting seasons as a physical reminder. Here we have like the leaves physically change color, then they fall off the trees. Like there is no going back. And I think that can actually be kind of a nice outlet. But specifically with this card, the Five of Cups, with it being a water sign, it is an encouragement to like allow that to flow. And the five being a card of change makes sense too. And I think in a way, though, the Five of Cups very much tells us, yes, we're looking at the things we're losing. We're seeing the water spill out. We're seeing it flow back into the river, that cycle of allowing it to go back out. But there's two perfectly beautiful cups behind you. And I think that is the piece that really is coming to play here. We can't ignore the feelings that are coming up. We do have to acknowledge some things have to change in order for us to move forward. But again, the King of Pentacles is right there. We have all the pieces we need for this new decision. And yes, it means saying yes to something, saying no to something else. But we can't let ourselves get lost in that feeling. We can't let ourselves completely just dissolve into that energy of grief. We have to allow it to move us forward and say that, again, with the sacrifice, that I think plays in really well to that energy of like, we have to sacrifice the seed in order to see what happens. We have to sacrifice some things that maybe we're working fine. And I've been saying this a lot. Just because you are good at something doesn't mean it's good for you. Those are the hardest things to let go of. Even relationships where it's a perfectly wonderful person, whether it's a friend, a partner, whatever, somebody that you really care for, but you just know you're not aligned in the same path. It could be a job or a career that you identified with really, really strongly. But there does come a time when you're like, yes, this is good enough, but it's not feeding me anything new. And that's where, like I was saying earlier, like for me, I need that feeling of a challenge and like can't be in a plateau too long where it doesn't feel like I'm getting anything new out of it. And I think sometimes that we have to realize starting in college, starting high school, starting a new type of school, a new type of journey, I think makes sense for this time of year. Yeah, you're sad that like you're not going to be with the same classmates you were with last year. You're not going to be in the same physical place. We all have certain elements of each part of our lives that we really hold on to dearly. But I think then knowing, okay, but this could create a whole new version of me, a whole new possibility for what my life is like. And I think if we all kind of consider this time of year, regardless of whether or not you're making an actual big change like that, but just opening yourself to being like, what would really fill me up? What would give me a new sense of purpose and excitement and passion towards something new? And what am I going to have to sacrifice to do that? Feel the grief because that just means that you cared about it and that it's something that fed you something at some point. And maybe that was the brand new thing at some point and it was exciting. And sometimes we get still attached to those nostalgic feelings, but at some point it's not new anymore. And if you're not growing with it and you're sort of growing past it, then I think you sometimes know when there's like the no turning back point where you're like, okay, I can't pretend and fit myself back in there anymore because I have outgrown it. And this is the in between part. It's like that point where it's like I'm seeing the evidence already of where I want to go. And it's just a matter of like, how am I going to allow myself to shift and change to head in a new direction without losing myself in that process of grief and, getting sucked back into the old. If we hold on to something too long and let ourselves sit with something too long, sometimes we can talk ourselves out of it. It's just that sudden realization of like, oh my God, I'm really excited for this next chapter. But I just realized that I can't do this anymore. And I think that's a really beautiful place to be in, August going into September.
Oh, I really like that. I think that's a good description of it. I love the thing you said, don't let yourself dissolve into the grief because it can feel like a bottomless ocean if you're not used to or don't want to go into that place. And the theme I came up with around this week was trust in the unknown, which I feel like has been a recurring theme. Even through Leo season, we had that a little bit. And particularly the Leo eclipse itself was much more find the one true thing that you can hold on to, even if you don't know where it's leading or you don't know how you're going to get there. So there is that continued feeling with all of these transits. Of course, the sun enters Virgo on the 23rd. Now that happens at about 10:20 p.m. Eastern. So if you are further west, I'm going to say Pacific into Hawaii and beyond, the Virgo season may start for you on the 22nd, but for majority of people, it will start in the evening or afternoon of the 23rd. On that day, we also have the Sun trine Chiron in Taurus. This is just as Taurus is still experiencing Chiron for the first time in almost 50 years. But Chiron is also retrograde and just getting ready to leave. So it's at that 0 degree in a couple of minutes before it's going to go back in. And I think in some ways that will, I don't want to say soften the moon moving into Virgo, but it certainly flavors it in a way that brings up grief, brings up a wound, allows you to see it like maybe this is the time I'm going to take action on this part of myself that doesn't trust, or I'm going to take action on, do I believe I'm enough? What is enough? I'm going to say that a lot about Chiron and Taurus because we're collectively looking at how much do we need? Where do we get these sources for what we need to survive? Who determines what is enough? I feel like we've somehow outsourced that information to something beyond ourselves. And we're getting back in touch with that. And that is going to bring up grief. It is going to bring up sadness in some way. On the 25th, we have Mercury moving into Virgo. Now, keep in mind, Mercury was in Cancer for like 6 weeks. Then it flew through Leo. Now it's already into Virgo. This is all still just in August. And it's going to, again, fly through Virgo. It's only there until September 10th. So I would really encourage you to harness this quick 3 weeks because it's going to help your mind slow down, make those lists, see where things aren't lining up. And it may feel like an insurmountable list, but I would still write it now, journal about it, because you can revisit this under Libra or under Scorpio and see, oh, okay, these were things I don't need to worry about. But there will be, I think, something in that energy, particularly this time, because we're clearing out the eclipses where you're going to find a root that you didn't necessarily expect. On the 27th, Mercury is going to conjunct the sun in Virgo. So the sun came in first, Mercury's flying up behind it. And when they cazimi this way, when Mercury goes across and in front of the sun, we talk about the ancients, and particularly in some of when Mercury comes across the sun, we call that a cazimi. And this is where the energy and the residual effects from that Mercury retrograde burn off in a way. So it's a rebirth for Mercury in the sign of Virgo. It's almost like it gets a clean, fresh dose. It takes a bath in Virgo energy. This is going to be exciting, again, to encourage you to get back in touch with these parts of you that knows there's a better system and a better way, and you're still figuring out how you're going to get there. The kicker for this week is the full moon in Pisces on the 28th is that partial lunar eclipse and the bookend to the Leo eclipse we just had. It is also going to be square. Uranus is going to be square the sun and Mercury, and Mercury and the sun are practically on top of this configuration too, with that full moon opposite in Pisces. So there's a lot of what I would call kind of built up tension underneath. I'm curious what card you get for this before we dive into the rest of the eclipse.
Okay, so this is actually classic how the cards work for me, where anytime I'm having a conversation with the deck as I'm shuffling. And when I pulled the cards for this month originally, I didn't like put them all back, but I had a jumper come out and I was like, no, as usual, I don't think that's for us. And so I didn't include it in the cards for the weeks. But then just now it came out again. And I went, I don't really love this. Put it back in, shuffled again, and it came out again. So, and then when I just heard you say Pisces, I just clicked in my head. I was like, that's why this is here. But then I pulled two more cards. So the card was the King of Cups, which for Pisces 100% makes sense as the really positive energy of Pisces, which is being very in tune with your emotions. Once you get to that deeper knowing of yourself, you have that confidence and you can weather whatever emotions are coming around from other people or from within. You have a system of filtering information to know that it's just information. And yes, you have to feel it. You can feel it really deeply, but you're not going to allow that to change your course. So coming off of that energy of the grief, it's like, yes, you can feel that grief, but knowing that you still have a purpose, you still have a mission. There's something that you need to keep pushing forward to do. When I pulled the next card, still a similar theme, but makes sense. It's actually my August card for inviting shadow, which is the Eight of Cups. Again, walking away, facing away from it, leaving that behind you, not staring at what you're losing, but walking away. So yes, the cup is floating away, but there's nothing left there for you. And with it being an 8, there's also an energy of abundance to that. It's a powerful energy to choose to walk away for yourself, going towards something brighter. So this fits in exactly with what I was just saying, and the fact that I just pulled this now, I didn't pull this ahead of time. It's sort of, again, from spirit saying, no, like we have to trust that. And then because I like odd numbers for cards, I pulled another one and it's another 8. I pulled the 8 of Wands. So it's just this beautiful sort of validation that when you do choose yourself, things will move quickly. Things will move for you. Things will move in that King of Pentacles direction, that energy of like, yes, this is going towards a bigger picture. And I think sometimes we know in our hearts that when we start something new, it's for a short time. It's like, okay, this is temporary. Yes, it's going to be my reality for a while, but I know it's not the end goal. I know this isn't my forever thing. I'm doing it because it serves the purpose for what I need now, whether it's just finding stability again or like, completing a degree, whatever the thing is that you're like, this is temporary. It's a big thing, but it's not all of what I am putting my energy into. Whereas I think right now, a lot of people, maybe it's just people that are going to be tuning into the podcast. Maybe we're all in a similar place, but whatever this next cycle is feels more long-term. That King of Pentacles, like this is the cycle that is going to shape the rest of your life. So there is like an importance. And I think that's why the grief is heavier, but there is a certain sadness that accompanies the more permanent change. I'm changing careers. I'm moving to another country. I'm getting married. I'm having a child, something that really does shape your entire life trajectory. That's what I'm feeling for a lot of people that are going to be hearing this is that is the difference in like why that grief is sort of lingering with us a little bit right now. And again, fall and Virgo season also, I think, is a great time to experience it because there's a grounded energy to it. It's holding that energy. If it's in a water season, it just keeps flowing, it just takes it, it adds to it. You're getting more water coming in. Whereas I think having this at a time when typically very logical and very planned, yes, you still have to feel it and it's encouraged to allow those to flow through you. And I think rather than allowing it to flood and fill you up totally, just allowing it to flow and then keep moving out. Every river has to go back out to the ocean. At some point, there has to be cycles. Everything's cleared away, everything's washed. We're kind of getting a cleansing at this point with this eclipse energy. And then from here forward, we now know the new direction. Now I can do the Virgo things of like, okay, if I want to do this, I have to do X, Y, Z. What's stopping me from doing it? Maybe letting go of this, starting this. Like you do take a bit of an inventory. There is something about this time of year that allows you to start doing that, taking stock into what the next season of your life is going to look like. But I think this is going to be a big shift for a lot of people where there's just no going back.
I was reflecting while you were talking about that, about how right now we really only have Mars in water. We've had Neptune pull out of Pisces and into Aries earlier this year. And we also had Jupiter that was hanging out in Cancer for a whole year move into Leo. So this is the first of these Pisces, and all of the eclipses for Pisces have been lunar. But this is the first one that only has Mars, water, also activated. And that brings up exactly what you were saying, this feeling of taking motion, taking action. I've been through this. I've white knuckled my way through logic and trying to figure out how I was going to get there. And the words I came up for in terms of a theme for this one is to like let go of the map. There is no map. Full moons always want you to release something in order to continue to grow. But anytime it's an eclipse, it's going to add just a huge amount of intensity and creative transformation and that turning point that accelerates your growth kind of out of left field. So this particular eclipse being the final one in Pisces for another 9 years, I think is a huge invitation to let go of what has undermined your faith, your trust. Like, where have you been completely held back by fear and doubt? And like we were talking about with that Virgo, like trying to wait for everything to be perfect. I'm going to take action. I'm going to get married. I'm going to have a child. I'm going to do the career. I'm going to move. Whatever it is, I'm going to wait until I know that it's logical and there's a plan and I'm going to succeed. And I think this lunar eclipse, even if you made a huge statement on the Leo eclipse that said, this is what I want, this follow-up lunar eclipse is going to say, here's a version that you never even thought of. Here's something that is different or a different way to do it, or you're just going to have to trust and take the leap because it's not going to come the way you expect it to. I would recommend the veil is going to be really thin around this eclipse. So keep your eyes open for like weird matrix glitches, like synchronicities. Of course, we always say downloads, but what does that mean? It just means like, oh my gosh, I didn't think of it that way. Or I heard, a podcast episode or somebody said something on the radio and it sparked something else that made me look at the picture in a different way. Pull your own tarot cards, meditate, just whatever it is. Know that it could, like Andrea said, be the catalyst or the point where you notice there's no going back. This is a new direction. And because Uranus is squaring the Sun and Mercury, that's exactly the configuration that's like your best laid plans are going to get blown up. Uranus always does it the rebellious way. It always does it the surprising, shocking, out of the blue. And here the Sun and Mercury are like, no, we're in Virgo. We got a plan. We're making lists. We are packing snacks. We are ready to go. And Uranus is like, yeah, no, Too bad. So let go of the anxiety. And I think that's a lot of where this cups energy is that has played out for the last few weeks. Those underlying emotions, the fear, the anger, any of it that is coming up, just have faith in your path to keep just moving forward. And it doesn't have to be big leaps every day. It's like small incremental steps. If all I could do today was send one email, it's okay. You're trusting that the true purpose is to strengthen your trust in the unknown, to trust and release the fear that it had to all be perfect before you took those first steps.
Yeah, I think that the eclipse energy is really moving through a lot of the energy that we have been sitting on. You've been like, oh, I'm too busy to deal with that. Or like, I'm just waiting for this to happen. And I think hypothetical things are the worst for me. I could spend hours and days coming up with every possible hypothetical reason why not to do something. But I get a feeling in my hips, like around my sacral energy, where I just physically feel like I have to get up and move and do the thing. And I think so many people are probably getting to whatever their version of that is, where you physically feel uncomfortable. There's just something that you can't ignore anymore. And you're like, how have I dealt with this for so long? Or the dynamic that's not working anymore. And as long as it's something we're familiar with, we're like, that's fine. It is what it is. But as soon as your body gets involved and you can't ignore it, you can't escape your own body. I think that's where we actually start to make the changes. And then it's interesting because talking about like repeating cycles and energy we're going back to, the next card is kind of related to this in a way, but we just had this card, which is the Seven of Wands. Again, with the boundaries, it's that delicate balance between protecting yourself and putting yourself out there at the same time. It's like, okay, in order to make this next step, I probably have to show up as a different version of myself. I have to make some changes with myself in order to get to the next place. But that also invites more questions and comments and, feedback from the people around you, either in new places or people that are comfortable with the way you are now. And we talked about this before. Like, there is a sort of a reaction that people have when you decide to do something that they would be scared to do or that they would feel is too big of a leap. And whether it's well intentioned or not, sometimes that does happen where you say, I'm going to do this thing that seems wild to anyone else. But when you're so sure already in your mind, you have to find ways to be still mindful of what the reality is, the realities of what could go wrong, of course. That's a Virgo thing. Virgo is going to think of what to be prepared for, what the outcome could be if things don't go perfectly. But you also have to be confident enough to say the discomfort of staying outweighs the discomfort of having to step into something new. We've had the glimpse of it. We've gotten such a clear vision from that King of Pentacles. Like, this is the legacy I want to be living towards. Then you have that King of Cups where you've mastered, okay, no, I know how I feel about it. I'm able to still feel good about it. Even when I'm questioning it, I still come back around to know that it's right for me. So then this is the stage of, okay, I'm grieving, I'm walking away, I'm making the tough choices. And yes, there's going to be friction there. The Seven of Wands is a fire energy. There is some push and pull with that. But at the end of the day, when you've already made the decision and you know you're not going back, it's just a matter of now, instead of protecting your heart and like what you're thinking you might want to do, like we were at before, now it's more of like a pronounced feeling of I'm defending in a way that isn't me questioning it at all. It's just me stating this is what it is. I'm going to do it and still holding space for people, but at a distance. It's like this might be part of the grief is okay, if that's how you feel, you're going to need to be over there on this side of the bubble for a while because I have to focus in here. And if you're not contributing to this energy, if you're pouring water on my fire, it's going to be a problem. I'm guided by this fire. So if you're going to put it out, you're going to have to be on the other side of this fence, and I think that's part of the trouble of choosing a new path that's maybe very different from how people are seeing you now, even to yourself. You might even have to defend against yourself, like your own self-sabotaging ways, but there's something different. It's easier to do it this time, and it just feels very solid. And I think it makes sense being an earth sign. It's just more of a grounded approach where you're feeling like this is the new reality and you're feeling it again in your body. You're feeling it in your body that it's sure. And that's how you know that you can defend it. You're not going to be swayed. Nobody's going to just be able to just move past it and then convince you otherwise because you're like, no, I'm in it. I'm rooted in this. It's happening. I'm staying here.
I was nodding along with everything you were saying. It's interesting because on the third, Jupiter, which is in Leo, it's trine. So those are those positive, it's like an alliance between two planets. This time it's Saturn and Aries. It is retrograde. But again, this goes back to the pattern I was talking about before, where we've got Saturn in Aries, where it's not happy. It's like having your foot on the gas and the accelerator at the same time, because Saturn says you're going to take the slow way and you're going to learn everything you need to because the reward and the payoff is going to be greater if you do. Jupiter's like, okay, great, whatever. We're just going to do more. Whatever. So we'll do more is more is more. So to have these two planets trine, this is the first one of two of these we're going to have. The next one comes in April. But it's like, just do your taxes. It's maybe not the exciting thing you wanted, but you really have to resist cutting corners. Because I guarantee if you try to take that fiery, fast shortcut, and I think this in some ways is emotional, it is doing the grounded, embodied work of the emotions that are arising in order to move past it in a real and productive way. Because you can keep repeating it, and the stars are going to say, we'll bring back these lessons again. Because in some ways, this energy is so similar to what we had in 2019. It was the last time we had some of this fiery, Aries, just burn things down kind of energy. And if you can reflect back in some ways, again, because even the nodes were part of that story, how have you either burned through the lesson and didn't take the slow way, or have you found a way to reward yourself emotionally for what you have overcome, the boundaries you have put in place? It's all coming to sort of this coalescence, the gelling in some way into this new experience for you. So don't cut corners. There might be break checks, just something to be aware of. On the 31st, that Mars in Cancer, again, it's our only water, is then going to square Saturn. So here's the emotional upheaval that literally comes the next day. It's going to just keep the tension in the air. And it is that feeling of like getting gut checked or break checked just when you thought, okay, yesterday I'm like, yay, I made progress. And then the very next day, it's like, actually, no, you didn't. Here's like a throwback to see if you really did. Because Saturn, I always say Saturn is your tax keeper. It wants you to keep every receipt to prove that you did all the lesson plans, that you paid for all the permit. And if you don't, if you cut corners, that's where it's going to come back and get you real quick. And it's still going to be trine Jupiter. So it's going to be happy to crank up the volume on your anxiety or anything that makes you feel like you're not worthy. Remember, we talked about Chiron being part of this whole Virgo cycle. It's where am I worthy of moving past this or trusting myself? Ugh. September 1st, we still have that continuing square with Mars and Saturn, and Jupiter is still there. What amplifies it today is now Mercury is going to be moving in more so in a supporting way to Mars. It's going to be at this point sextile to it, which is much more about creating harmony and opportunities. I would expect you to have kind of that mental breakthrough, a little bit of like, oh, I see what's happening here. I got it. So, stay curious about something that comes up that you weren't expecting. By the 4th, things have calmed down. We're going to have that third quarter moon in Gemini. It is also square to Mercury, and Uranus is in Gemini. So that gives that third quarter moon a bit of that flavor. Just, I would say, resist the urge to burst your own bubble or burst anybody else's bubble. Kind of stay in your own lane. You don't have to know or figure out how it's all going to work out. I would just stay curious. Remember, Virgo's also ruled by Mercury. So anytime we have some of these Mercury connections during the month, Virgo's also going to feel it. You're just feeling it from that logical framework that says, wait, I made a plan for this and the plans didn't go according to everything I prepared for. So now what am I supposed to do? And again, it's lean back into how you can support yourself. Very much that 7 of Wands energy. I'm just going to pick them up and we're going to keep moving in a new direction. So yeah, I also think you could be surprised in some way by somebody that does show up to help that you didn't expect. Even surprised that it does work out better without the full plan. Like, oh, I thought I needed the first aid kit and everything else, but I didn't. Came out better. So it doesn't always have to be bad. It can also come out great. And you didn't cut corners and you learned the lesson and everything happened to your benefit. It just depends. It depends on your own chart and what's going on in your life.
Yes, I think the allowing for change part is going to be really important this whole fall. It just feels like something that's going to be in a good way, again, in a good way. Like the more you allow things to change, the more you're going to feel like you're getting closer to the version of yourself you want to be or the version of your life you're working towards. This card in the middle here, we haven't seen, I don't think, for a little while, but for September 6th to the 12th, we have a major arcana, the devil. So, I don't know about you, but I think the energy that I get from the devil actually is a kind of a positive thing. It's like a check-in with yourself because it's number 15. The one is new beginnings, changes, something's got to come in that we don't have. And whether it's good or bad, that is always like case by case scenario. But the 5 is also change. So together that creates 6. So that's creating harmony. That's creating balance. That's creating the base level of where you need to be within yourself. So often this is the point where you will actually start to recognize the patterns that are showing up. Like, are you self-sabotaging? Are you, engaging with things that are going to keep you from getting to that next version of yourself? Are you finding that you're saying yes to all of the things that are for sure going to take you off course or fill up all that time that you had set aside for yourself? And I think too, like we have to also acknowledge that when we are kind of feeling like doing the things that are unhealthy for us or whatever it is that's your vice, there's a reason for that. There's something emotionally that's happening and that's your body and your energy is asking you to check in on. There is stress associated with change that is still going to affect us, whether we're doing it for a positive reason or not. I always think of like the energy of just moving. There's always an element of, oh my God, what if my stuff breaks? What if the moving truck steals all my stuff? What if there's, stuff that goes missing? There's all these things that could go wrong that stress us out about any big change. But at the same time, you also know you're moving somewhere that you're excited about. You're doing something that's really good. So, of course, our coping mechanisms are going to come back. Of course, naturally, that's part of the process. But being aware of it. And again, we've had 2 king cards. And like to me, when those start showing up, those places in the cycle where you feel like you've gotten to know yourself in that level, like we've had that like glimpse of what is driving us forward. We've had that King of Pentacles to say, this is the legacy I'm moving towards. We had the King of Cups to say, okay, I know my emotional cycles. I know what this means to me. I know that I can weather whatever is going to come through. I will be okay because I know I trust myself. It's just these past versions of myself trying to pull me back, right? It's not necessarily something I have to engage with. It's just something I have to be aware of. I haven't given up on myself. That's a phrase that just popped in. And it's like, I think sometimes we do have a tendency to give up on the plan entirely when it just gets a little bit hard. It's always almost at the top of the mountain where you're like almost there. And that can sometimes be the point where you just let it roll back down. But this is sort of that reminder that no, you don't have to do anything unhealthy to get to the other side. You just have to maybe ask someone else for help or give yourself more time, give yourself more grace. Do it messy, do it when it's not perfect. do whatever you have to do to just get it done and then clean it up later on the way down. I think this is in Virgo season, keeping this in mind. Sometimes it is only ourselves being the barrier. It's only because we have expectations of ourselves. But if we were in a reality where no one could see what it looked like when you were doing it, you would just do it to get it done. And I think that is sometimes the better way to do it. Put on your blinders, do the things you have to do, ignore the distractions, ignore those voices in your head telling you to just let it all go and sit on the couch.
I think collectively, I remember when we did the Wheel of the Year spread, and this is starting about the time where everybody got emotional cards. I think we were shocked by the consistency of everyone's fall cards being, and for example, I'll share my own, like Three of Swords. Oh, who doesn't love heartbreak? But very much that theme of heartbreak, of letting things go, the Six of Cups, and a lot of that energy came up through the fall. I bring this up because my theme for this, I really liked what you wrote, Don't Give Up on Yourself. Mine was, staying strong in the darkness, which I think really also plays into that Devil card. I always think the darkness that surrounds, it's just because they haven't taken off the chains and walked away or made their situation different. On the 10th, we really don't have anything. The 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th is all pretty calm, thank goodness. But the 10th is when things get spicy. Venus is going to move into Scorpio. It's going to stay there until October 25th. Then it retrogrades back into Libra at that point and moves back into Scorpio December 4th through January 7th. So we literally are only going to have Venus and Scorpio and Libra until next year. So when you take that into context, like you were saying about leaning into the peace, the harmony, the solidification of yourself, your emotions, your needs, that is exactly what this energy is all about, because Venus is not super happy in Scorpio. Scorpio loves to dig deeper into the unknown and kind of bring things to the surface and make changes. It's ruled by Pluto. Pluto loves death, transformation, the Devil card. But Venus is just trying to smooth things over. It rules Taurus and Libra. If we can make things look nice and feel nice, then I can trust my nervous system to move into the places that feel scary. But we're not going to have that. So where you can find that feeling in yourself, it's going to be really important. And like I said, aside from that short retrograde back into Libra, we don't get any new Venus energy until January 7th. I can't even believe we're starting to talk about the energy of next year. So if you go looking for like deep soul level connections or putting your heart into that project, I think so much of the Virgo energy right now too is I'm making a plan. I've got things figured out. You've got to stay open and inspired, even when you have no idea how that's going to work out, because it may be that you made the plan and it's already changed 5 times. It's going to keep changing. The other thing that happens on the exact same day, on the 10th, Uranus is going to go retrograde in Gemini. Well, it entered Gemini last year and retrograded out, but this is our first sustained Gemini retrograde. September 10th through February 8th. This is 5 months of retrograde to rethink, rewrite, rebel. Uranus is a lot like Mercury on steroids. It does want to break those things down, but it gives you this electric shock, this bolt of lightning kind of from out of nowhere. And it wants to be different. It's very Aquarian in that way. It doesn't want to do it the same old way. So question your beliefs. Poke at things that you thought you wanted and stay open to things being unconventional, because you have everything inside. You have the tools. You're going to make it. It's just that it isn't necessarily going to look the way you thought. It could be completely unhinged. It's entirely possible, but that might be exactly what you need. Venus also is going to oppose retrograde Chiron at this point, right? Venus just slid into Saturn. Chiron's still at that 0 degree of Taurus hanging out. So your worth, again, is coming up. Are you enough? because we've got Venus and Scorpio, it does want to say, do I have enough? Do I have enough emotional support? Is my money working for me? How am I moving through in a way that feels safe? Because Scorpio is not afraid to sting before the danger has really declared itself. So you might be saying, this isn't going to work. Like, I don't have enough in my bank account, or I don't feel stable. Like, my life from the outside looking in does not look great. But I really encourage you to sit with that wound and figure out what is the truth. Even sharing it with others, I think, could be particularly helpful. We're going to be on that Libra-ish edge for some things. And then that square to Uranus with the new moon comes in. So the Virgo new moon on the 10th/11th, depending on which time zone you're in, also flavors all of this. So you've got, Venus brand new into Scorpio. You've got Uranus retrograde in Gemini, and then you've got Chiron. Plus now this new moon that is planting a seed that you don't necessarily see or understand. And again, I just keep coming back to what you said. Don't give up on yourself. Even if you can't see it or you feel like you are the one in the dark and everybody else has got it. Don't get overwhelmed by all that outside noise. And whatever emotions are coming up, it's okay to be in them. Just don't let them rule the show. We're still got Mars doing its Mars stuff in Cancer. And so emotions are going to feel like on a short fuse, like trigger ready to explode about something. On the 12th, Mercury is in a beautiful trine with Pluto. I think this can help soothe some of those worries in some ways, because it's like seeing, oh, I'm not alone in this pattern, or I can see that there's more to the situation or the picture than meets my eye. And then Mercury at that point, trine Pluto, but opposite Neptune, again, kind of pulls your head out of the cloud or lifts the fog, lifts the curtain, and kind of shows you Oz behind the background. So keep in mind that all of this swirling energy, very much like the devil card, the darkness, you're going to see things you didn't expect. How are you emotionally regulating yourself as you move through them? And, it's okay to get uncomfortable, but look at those beliefs and say, how can I change them to match the person I am now? And can I explain that to someone else? Or do I even need to? Am I okay to just move through this in my own way that keeps me feeling safe, even if I'm made to feel bad for doing the things that I'm doing?
I feel like that's such an important message to just like keep doing it, even if it seems like everyone around you isn't seeing the vision. I think that's really important. And it's interesting because now I'm looking at the next two cards and they're very significant cards that are coming up. So I think we're getting back into that energy of like, okay, we're solid in this energy now. Because from September 13th to 19th, I have the 10 of Pentacles, our very dear friend who shows us that things are possible in a tangible way. There are signs that we are moving in a positive direction. We may not be seeing it in like full version of the vision at this point, but I think because even though it's pentacles, which we tend to associate with like material things and money, which 100%, I think that's what's going to be happening now is you're going to start actually getting some rewards coming in for the work that you're doing moving into this new version. I always feel like spirit crumbs work through pentacles for me. So it's like the thing you can respond to, the opportunity you can say yes to, the person that you're connecting to, the funds that are coming in, the materials you need. That kind of thing is what's going to actually solidify and make you feel sure, like you can root into this new version. But the other piece of it is sharing it with the community. Like there's people that are around. There's connections that you have that help you feel like, yes, okay, this feels good. Because if you're just on your own doing these things and there's no one to appreciate the goods that you're making or what you have to offer, then it's a pretty lonely path. So there also has to be people that are benefiting from being around you when you are at this peak of doing what you're meant to be doing. There are people that benefit from you being in a really good place in your life, whether it's financial or just being in your energy, being inspired by you. You're leading by example. And I think there's like ripple effect that happens with the 10 of Pentacles. The 10 of Cups is very much about fulfillment and how everyone feels and, feeling the love of the community and the people around you. But I think with the Pentacles, it's like the tangible version of that. They have equal feelings in terms of, for me, like success and the way that it is impacting your future, but they just have a difference in how they're experienced in the moment. I think with this, it's like a tangible proof to you where you can be like, okay, look, see, I said I was going to do this, and now look what's coming up. Whereas the Ten of Cups tends to be more like, oh, I feel really good about this, and like people are happy for me. Like it's a different kind of energy. This is more of like a, okay, I can build from this. Like this is giving me a foundation for what I'm doing moving forward. And it's proving to me that the work was worth it and that like I can do this and get to that King of Pentacles energy that I've been dreaming of. Again, the 10 being the end of a cycle also tells us that we're able to level up from here, that we've done the work, you've done what you were meant to do, and now you can build on it. There's more to come. I think sometimes we get a little bit discouraged if we see like a 10 of Pentacles and we're like, okay, but I'm not living the dream yet. But it's the fact that you are taking steps and now you're seeing rewards. You're seeing proof that that King of Pentacles legacy sort of vision that you have is possible and that there are stages to it. And you've just completed one of the stages, even if it is just you believing it. That could be what it is. It's just this is the thing that gets you on board fully, that helps you feel like you can do it. And that's all that matters sometimes is like, even if it's just somebody, maybe it's somebody in your circle who just makes a point of saying, wow, it's really cool that you're doing this. I can see it now. I can see the vision. Maybe that's what you need to hear. It's whatever tangible proof you need to feel connected to it. When you move past the fears, you move past the distractions, there is a reward for it. And that's sort of what I was feeling with the devil is if you can push past that hard choice or that hard move, you get to see this thing that's possible. And then it reminds you of why you were doing it.
Yeah, that really aligns. The feeling I had around it was like, stop shrinking to fit in, stop downplaying your success. And I think that's part of that 10 of Pentacles as well, because you're seeing the physical evidence of what you alone have accomplished. Where the cups is more that collective, oh, we're all together. We can all stand under the harmony and the great feelings. This is, yeah, like standing firm and like I did this. This week opens up on the 13th. We have Mercury. It is now in Libra, like we were talking about. It's going to be trine Uranus in Gemini. This is nice because, again, this forms that alliance. And Uranus is retrograde, so it's giving us a little bit more of that internal flavor, but it's still sparking ideas and quick thinking and the breakthroughs you didn't really expect somehow. But because Mercury is in Libra, this to me says it's coming from outside of you. It's like getting recognition for all of this work that you've done. I would say, keep your ears open, be prepared to be surprised, not only maybe surprise yourself, but even when you share your feelings about someone else and what they've done or the work they've done. I think that's where that feeling multiplies. And I think that's some of that Uranus unexpected energy. It's like the one person in line that buys the coffee that changes and has a ripple effect for the next person and the next. There's something to be said about that movement coming in faster than I think we expect. On that 13th, aside from that, we still have the sun in Virgo, but it's going to be sextile. So creating that harmonious opportunity of some sort with Mars in Cancer. So again, this is a very practical solution to seeing that my emotions were right, my instincts were right. I think of Cancer as that intuitive instinct. I'm getting proof that that was spot on. On the 14th, I don't often talk about Black Moon Lilith, but I think it's important to note that it is shifting out of Scorpio and into Capricorn. It's going to be in Capricorn from September 14th through June 10th of 2027. So this brings more constructive, I would say, action. Lilith is that feminine energy that's not going to back down. She's not going to say, I'm going to take your word for it. I'm not going to be controlled by you, right? This was Adam's first wife and she would bow down. So this energy to me always speaks about How are we collectively as the feminine not going to bow down? And to me, it's in Capricorn, which I think is systems and structures. This may be a huge sweeping turnaround in government or somehow showing us that we are ready to step into this next level of power. The reason I bring that up is because Chiron, which is retrograde, is also going to trine Lilith that day, 0 and 0 degrees. So, yeah, I think there's a healing energy about the sweeping moves that we take together and that we can individually see our own pentacles. We can individually see the work we have done and what we're worth. Our value gets multiplied when it's shown together. On the 15th, Venus in Scorpio is going to square. These are that face off. I always call it like a boxing match between the two planets. So Venus and Scorpio, it's kind of uncomfortable. It's not sure who's coming for what. It wants to kind of protect its heart. Is square Pluto and Aquarius. What's the greater good for all? What's that long burning transformation we're making for humanity? This is the first of 3 of these squares. It's going to happen again in October in the 20th. Venus will be retrograde at that point and Pluto will be direct. So right now Pluto's retrograde and Venus is direct. So we're going to get kind of this on again, off again, inward, outward feeling of this energy several times between now and the end of the year. On the 17th, Chiron stations retrograde. It moves back into Aries. It will stay in Aries from September 17th through April 14th. And this is that final visit of like an 8-year cycle that started when Chiron came into Aries back in 2018, where it kind of collectively gave us all the courage to show up as ourselves. I look at the explosion of TikTok and Reels and making videos and just putting ourselves out there. But now when we get this shift of Chiron moving into Taurus, it's like, well, so what? I can make these. What's the value? What's the worth behind some of these things? And that's where we're going to start to see, I suspect, that bubble burst in some ways as we get a feeling of like, no, I want things to be slow and meaningful and have value to them. So keep in mind, if you have your Chiron natally at the end of Aries, you'll have your one last hit from this. That's someone in, I would say, around the age of 52-ish, 52 to 55. Just take that last hit, see if there's any last growth, anything else you want to feel into before this is finally done. And then on the 18th, we have Mercury in Libra, opposite Saturn in Aries. Libra and Aries, oh, I always feel bad for people that are born with placements in both of these because it is literally your identity versus the group versus relationships. And where do we fit in? So our mindset is going to be like, oh, it's for everyone. And what happens if I do this? I'm going to see how it affects X, Y, and Z. And I can see how if someone else leaned, 1 degree in a different direction, how this would benefit everyone. But Saturn in Aries is reminding you that it is all about you, that it is a moment to be, I don't want to say selfish, but to do the lesson you need to do despite what it looks like for the collective. So this is going to be a really push-pull energy. And it's the first quarter moon in Sagittarius. So let's add a little extra fire to the fuel. I would say don't be afraid to do the thing that doesn't conform. Sagittarius is like throw the backpack on and go hike in Europe for 6 weeks. Like run away. It's got a little bit of that runaway energy. And Mercury's gonna be like, but that isn't fair. And I want to stay for everyone. And Saturn's gonna be like, are you gonna do the lesson this time? Or are you just trying to take a shortcut? So remind yourself, is this a shortcut or am I really doing something for myself that's going to last long term? So it's a busy week, that one. But, we've only got a couple of days left before we move out of Virgo and into Libra. So I'm curious what we set up with your next card.
Yes. So after that hectic week, we have a little bit of a dangler between the two seasons. I say that as a little hint of what the card is, but for the last couple of days, from the 20th to the 21st, I guess it is, we have the Hanged Man. We have a major arcana. And I think, honestly, going into Libra, having a little bit of an indecision in between moment, probably not unlikely, with Virgo being a mutable sign to begin with, and then having this ability to be open to the transition of what's happening. This is kind of a moment after we have these really strong cards. We had the Devil, we had the Ten of Pentacles. Then it's time to just sort of take a moment and see what comes next. Try not to force it. Once you get evidence that it's working, why try to fight against that? Why try to force something? If it's already working at this point, we're pretty set in what we're going to do. Allow yourself to just be there, because maybe there's a message you haven't seen yet. Maybe there is a sign that, or a synchronicity that's going to help you decide what the next move is. It's that openness to being in the in between and just taking a breath, taking a moment. It's sort of giving you that permission slip to check in again. See if there's a perspective you hadn't considered, or maybe after having the reward or the tangible things come in, you then start to think, okay, well, if this worked, maybe I can think bigger. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's actually a positive thing. Saying, you know what, that was easier than I thought. Maybe the bigger version of this, or like maybe I can take it a step further and, put this out to more people or do it in a bigger way. And I think there's a lot possible when the hangman shows up, because you have that sort of curious energy of something new coming in with the one. But then with the two, you have this like receptivity where you could be taking something in, allowing something to come to you. Together, it's like a creative energy, or something could be birthed out of this possibility, this in-between period where things are working their way through in the universe and in the energy around you. And it's sort of like stopping to let the universe catch up to you. Like if you have been very busy these last few weeks doing a lot of things and seeing it all come together, it's like a chance to just sit and be like, okay, before I take the next step, what else do I need to know? What else do I need to do? What else do I need to carry forward? And there are all the possibilities when you're standstill. There's this ability to be receiving anything that's willing to come your way, whether it's a person, a connection. Maybe you've been playing it safe up until this point and just sort of doing the things will work. And now all of a sudden you go, you know what? Let's just throw it all out there and see what happens. But sometimes you do need to take a pause to give yourself the space to realize what it is you want to do next. And I think having this going into Libra season, it's an air sign. And I think Libra tends to sometimes go with the flow too much and maybe just keep going with what other people are asking of it. And maybe that's a pattern that you're sort of seeing come up. But it may be a point where you say, you know what, give me a minute because I don't know if I can commit to that. Maybe just give me a minute to think about it. Give me a minute to decide if I want to say yes or no. Maybe that's all this moment is just a moment of you sitting in your own energy saying, I'm really not sure that's for me right now. Maybe in the past it would have been. Maybe I would have said yes 2 weeks ago, but now after having this evidence of the Ten of Pentacles and me seeing what's possible if I do this, I'm actually really excited to throw myself into this new path. The pause is sometimes necessary. Sometimes if we just let ourselves react immediately to something, we'll get ourselves back into a path that we didn't mean to be on. So I think it's a really interesting and really helpful energy to have in this transition period, because we have to kind of fight between the two sides of us. The side of us that is so sure that has to go exactly to plan from Virgo, and then the side of us that can be easily convinced to get out of that plan from Libra. There's like an in between where it's like maybe the plan needs to be adjusted a little bit, but doesn't mean you have to totally throw the plan out to go with someone else's suggestion. How do you find that middle ground of what feels right to you? By sitting still, by giving yourself time to be in your body and feeling into what you think is the best way forward. There has to be an in between that feels confident, that feels grounded, that feels good in your body. And I think that this is a great time to be doing that as we move into Libra season.
I think you summed it up beautifully. There's really no new astrology between the 18th and the equinox on the 22nd, but I love that the hangman comes right at the equinox. I mean, that is, I think, such a sacred moment to us in in our DNA, like the ancient parts of us recognize how that shifting season is worth marking. But have we? Do we let ourselves do that? And I really liked what you were talking about in terms of things coming up. We've got Mercury in Libra, so we're naturally going to go to how does this affect others? We're going to take ourselves out of the equation. But what I would encourage you to do is say who has access to your time. That's going to be more important than anything because you may even feel magnetism. Like people are going to be curious, are going to want to talk to you, right? Everything's going to be about relational and how do we relate to one another. So you're going to feel, I think, frustrated. And particularly as empaths, we need our time sometimes to be away from people, to regroup, to be in our own energy, because it can sometimes be difficult to know where we end and someone else begins. So use this as that sacred pause. It's okay to say, you know what? I didn't see that coming. Let me get back to you. We have that Saturn and Aries, one foot on the gas, one on the brake, that's constantly fueling this engine in the background to push, push, push. But if you can remember that this is a moment to pause, and we'll see what happens on the other side of the equinox, what those cards look like. But just in terms of astrology, it's really kind of quiet until the 25th. And even then, it's just the sun in Libra opposite Neptune and Aries. So it's going to amplify that yourself versus other energy. And you're going to think, oh, well, who am I? Right? Neptune and Aries is giving us that foggy feeling of understanding yourself or your dreams ahead of everyone else. And the sun in Libra is amplifying everyone else and making us look at the collective and the bigger picture. So I just think if you can, put it in your calendar ahead of time to sort of say, I'm going to need a timeout that weekend, like the 20th through the 22nd, to just don't call me, I'll call you. And get back in your own energy because we're going to have a full moon and other things popping up that are going to pull on this line between, I want to say, being empowered and being entitled. Where am I stepping into myself and feeling empowered and having, healthy ego and healthy self-confidence? Or where am I being entitled? Do I think I deserve these things? So advocate for yourself, but kind of read the room, read the energy before you go too far. But also keep in mind that's coming at you as well. If you feel someone is being overly pushy or overactive, kind of take a pause, take a step back and say, I'm going to bow out of this a little bit.
Yeah, it's so interesting not having a lot going on in that period and having the hangman up. It's like almost like saying this is a universal pause. Like we're all going to take a moment here and just check in on where we're at with that. I think that makes so much sense. And I think too, the fact that we had my cards for inviting shadow, like September is the emperor. We're really leaning into that grounded, really confident, but quiet, assured version of what we're building. And I think the fact that we have that King of Pentacles with Leo season as like sort of a grounding energy during the fire season, we have some of these hints of it. We have the Ten of Pentacles here. And then sort of having the Emperor as our guiding energy for September, I think there's a way to still be very firm in what it is you want. And again, boundaries, not the easiest in Libra energy. So I think it's going to be an interesting season to see, like Emily said, what comes up in the after the equinox to see what the energy is like on the other side of this. But leading up to it, if we have that in mind, it's okay to choose yourself. It's okay to put yourself first as long as you're being kind and fair about it. I think that's going to be kind of our guiding force going into the season, at least. Even if it ends up taking a bit of a turn at times, I think if we come back to that energy, it'll be really helpful collectively as well.
I really like that. And it'll be interesting to see on the other side of Virgo season where we all stand. But I do think it's a more emotional Virgo season than I think we've had in the past. And if you can be aware of that going in and allow yourself to not feel so triggered, and that Eight of Cups energy, because this heart, this saddles both of those. being okay to walk away when it no longer fits, and being okay if someone else walks away. Again, both sides. That Libra either or, both and, is going to be important to remember. In the meantime, do you have anything new coming in? Anything happening we need to be aware of beforehand? I've got new podcast episodes hanging out. So if you haven't, back up one, and there'll be another one just after this. Some solo episodes and me leaning into the version of myself that I am now, 5 years into the podcast. Really enjoying it, bringing more awareness to the work that I do and why I do it, why I find it so important, why the soul audit is really born from a place of passion for this work, and making sure that people see themselves in a fully aligned way. Like, to me, it's like handing you the owner's manual. You were born and you're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And I like to think of giving your soul audit to you as like, here's an owner's manual. Here's some tips and tricks to better navigate and operate the systems. I have a few of those open each month, and they're filling up quickly. So don't hesitate to send me a message if you want to chat about it or anything. I also am going to have some Blackthorn updates likely coming soon as we move into fall. I feel like the witches are back at it and feeling active in the house. And I really had thought I was going to do more art in July, and particularly in Leo season 2. I was like, oh, under this, these crazy astrological configurations that we haven't seen. And then it was like, no, this is not the energy that is conducive for making sacred objects. So I kind of put that on a little bit of a pause until really I'm feeling that Venus and Scorpio might be bringing up something. We'll see. But there are some more things coming, and the shop will be updated before the holidays. So if you're looking for a gift for someone else or for yourself to put on your wish list, those things will be getting posted a little bit later this year. How about you? What have you got going on?
I too took a bit of a creative pause during the time that I thought I'd be getting all of my new works out there, getting them in for while we have tourists here where I am. I'm in a cottage town, and that just didn't happen. I didn't even do my newsletter for the last 2 months. I took a little summer vacation from being organized, I guess, in a way. So maybe it is me getting back as we get closer to Virgo season. I'm like, maybe I'll start getting back into routine again. So I will be putting out a newsletter in September with Virgo season updates for what I'm up to in the fall. I feel like it's been kind of a whirlwind the last couple months. I've been doing some shows and events and things, and now going into fall, I think I too will be getting into more of a creative mood. But having said that, one of the things I'm really excited to do again that I did last year in the fall was the Beyond the Veil readings. They're PDF readings where I'm pulling cards for you to see what is coming through as you get into the season of being closer to spirit and what spirit has to pass across the veil to you. So I'm really looking forward to doing those again. And it was kind of cool for me to see the patterns that I resonated with that were coming up too. So those will be available to purchase. Again, it's just a PDF that arrives in your inbox. You don't even have to set aside time to connect. I just set the intention to connect with your energy and your guides. And then you'll have it delivered on October 31st on Halloween. Closer to the holidays, I'm going to have some prints and things available on my shop again. It's been a while since I've had anything updated there because all of my stock has been in physical locations for the summer and sort of spread around town. But I'm going to be slowly restocking the shop. And I think that's going to be really fun to be able to get things for the holidays and for me to be able to share what I've been up to with everyone. So yeah, I feel like we're kind of in a similar place in that way.
Yeah, I always like to share this part of our lives because I want the listeners to understand and feel that like we're right there with you in the middle of these transits. And Andrea and I end up inevitably messaging each other and saying, oh my God, did you feel the eclipse? Even the best laid plans that we made when we started the summer went sideways. So embrace and love yourself for wherever you are on your own individual journey. And I've been working really hard on leaning into that trust aspect for sure, and recognizing where I thought I was trusting And it wasn't. If I could encourage you to do anything between now and the end of Virgo season, it's to do something that scares you just a little bit. Something that makes you kind of that, like you were saying, that pressure in the hips of like, I just have to move. If you can do one thing that's that scary and let the universe surprise you with what comes back, it's been an incredible experience, I think, for both of us just in the last few weeks. So harness that energy while it's still there. Do something a little audacious, a little out of the box and radical, and see what happens. Because even if your nervous system screams no, I think you'll be surprised. Thank you all so much for listening, and I'll be back with some episodes soon, and Andrew will be back next month for Libra season.
Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Spirit Crumbs. You can find me on Instagram for this podcast at Spirit Crumbs, or you can also find me at Concrete and Crystals for my own spiritual offerings and more tidbits about my own journey. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.